Joining us today to discuss the special session are Senator Stephen Thane, Representative Julie Yamamoto, Representative Gayanne DeMordaunt, and Representative Sally Toon. Thanks so much for joining us. I know it's been a busy week. Representative Yamamoto, I wanted to start with you. We heard a lot of debate from lawmakers yesterday who didn't like multiple parts of the bill, and they didn't like the process, but they voted for it anyway. You supported the bill. What got you to yes?
I was happy to support it because I felt like that each component of it addressed a real need, and it was something that it's a no-brainer if you have a surplus to give money back to taxpayers. That didn't concern me at all, and I'm a person who feels like that schools are utilizing their money to the best of their ability, and that they could use more. And so having a source that is more stable and that can be counted upon made sense to me. And it also made sense to me to send it out to people, if they already were going to have a choice about the initiative, then give them that choice as well. Here we are going to give money to education and not raise your taxes. The other one will give money to education, but it will raise taxes.
And by that you mean Proposition 1, the Quality
Correct.
Education Act.
And so to me, that you're doing exactly what you'd hope to, is we feel like we're representing the people in our district, the people of Idaho, but now we're giving them an opportunity to weigh in and really giving them the two options.
Senator Thane, what got you to yes?
Well, there's a couple of things. One, even though I don't think money is the most important thing when it comes to education, it is a factor, and there are resources that can be given. And since the economy in Idaho seems to be generating income, putting more money into the classroom was something I could support. In my remarks and debating for the bill, I cautioned that money by itself is not the answer, that I think public education has erroneously taken the role of taking responsibility to see kids are educated when they should be helping parents. And it's the parents' responsibility to see kids are educated. So we need a little bit of a adjustment there so we understand the proper roles. And the structure right now needs to change just slightly to emphasize that. But the other thing was I did not like this initiative, and
The Quality Education Act.
The Quality Education Act, partially because it raised money on the wealthy, so-called wealthy. I think that some of the worst things that I see in California are coming with that initiative, and I really did not like it. This was an opportunity to basically repeal it before it even passed, if it did.
Representative Toon, I know that you also voted yes, but you got there a different way. I wanted to give you a chance to respond.
Absolutely. I did support the initiative in there as we went through the state because it was brought by the citizens of Idaho. And we tax ourselves all the time. We do that with bonds and levies, and we have for 20, 30, it's been an ongoing problem. And we have a backlog. We need to address that issue. As Senator Thane said, there are some things that definitely need changed. But we can't necessarily, parenting is a societal issue right now. We can't hold the kids necessarily responsible for the sins of the parents. As educators, we take care of them and we do what we have to do, but we have to make changes, and money will help. I got there because this is more. As an educator, we just can't not put the stable piece of the education in there. And it approached it a different way. We taxed ourselves with the initiative. This has a way of canceling the initiative, but I think the bill listened to the people of Idaho. That initiative was on the ballot, like it or not, and it still is on the ballot. And that means a whole lot of people signed to have that happen. And I think we as legislators have to look at that all over the state. And I got there because of that piece. Not a big fan of the tax parts of it, but you know, I do think people deserve the money. We have some inflation issues. Every one of us do in our districts. And property taxes, there's a whole lot of pieces that haven't been addressed yet. It's a step forward.
Representative DeMordaunt, you were one of 15 House members who voted no. There was only one no vote in the Senate. Why were you opposed to this piece of legislation?
You know, Melissa, it's interesting that you start with those numbers of 15 and 1 in terms of the no votes. Had you listened to the debate on the floor, at least on the House side, you would have heard a lot of angst and a lot of negative debate, but yes votes. And I dare say there was probably an even split in terms of the debate that came out of that. My own personal opposition to this was certainly not based on tax. If it had only been on returning that which belongs to the taxpayers anyway, I would have had no problem with that. The fact that, first of all, we're calling a special session when 45% of us are not going to be there next year. I believe those that have been elected deserve to make that kind of significant policy change. Second, I believe that it could have waited then in terms of January. Watching the economy, even the best economists are trying to read the tea leaves right now, and there's a lot of folks that are saying there's a softening happening, recession. We would have known a lot more had we waited until January. I think it would have been more prudent. And third, the fact that you had these two components, you could say three components to a bill, when our Constitution really does suggest that it should be single subject, and I would have liked to see those parts parsed out and would have been more comfortable with that. So that was my initial opposition.
And you bring up such a good point that there was so much negative debate yesterday from a lot of people who ended up voting yes. Representative Yamamoto, are you concerned about the precedent that this sets when you have so many lawmakers voting on this in a special session who aren't going to be back next year?
Well, I especially appreciated what Representative Gibbs said, that he was elected, and he was elected to serve until November 30th. And I do not believe that just because some have by choice and others by vote, they are still acting on the best they can do to represent their district and to represent Idahoans. And I think to say that they're not is, I don't agree with that. I know those people, and whether they're on the other side of the aisle or on our Republicans, I truly believe that people understood that that people need relief now, not waiting till January. And so I think I give Governor Little a lot of kudos to be willing to do something that everybody's going to say, oh, it's because he has an election. Okay, well, yeah, he does, but he also, they forget he's a taxpayer, he's a dad, he's a grandfather, and he's looking at he hears what people are saying, that it's hard to just get groceries, it's hard to do all the things. Inflation has hit us all hard. So he's trying to do what he can do now. That's a bold move, and it's a bold step for the people who are on the House floor or in the Senate yesterday to step up, and even with misgivings to say, we get it. We are not immune to hear what you're saying about it. It's tough. So we're going to help you right now. We're not going to wait till January. So I don't have a problem with those folks being able to vote and to represent the people that elected them in the first place.
Do you have a problem with it, Senator Thane?
No. This is following the rules that are currently laid out in the state constitution and state law. Right now, the governor is the one that can call special sessions. He's elected. He did what he was legally entitled to do. The legislature currently can't call itself back into session. If we would have called ourselves back into session, I think it would have been more of a point. but we did not. We reacted to the governor's call. I will point out that there is an initiative or a question on the ballot to change the state constitution that would allow the legislature to call itself back into session, but as it now stands, we can't, and so we were following the rules as they are currently laid out.
Can I add to that real quick? Please. Half of the people that will be unopposed, but half of them still have a opponent. So we really don't know who's going to be in the legislature. And as Representative Gibbs said, we have a job. We're still contending with constituent issues, getting a hold of everything. I mean, people still have my email. I'm answering emails and all of that. So, you know, it's fair. Let us do our job. And we don't know who's going to be there. We still have a major election to go through, and half of those seats are contested. So you really don't know who's there.
A lot of what we heard yesterday or during the special session was concern that there were no metrics, there were no goals attached with the education spending. That here is essentially a blank check. We will let the 2023 legislature appropriate that money. Should there be strings attached to that money tied to performance?
My answer would be, I would say no. It was passed as an inflation issue for our schools. They have same concerns. We have matrix for student goals and all of that, but this money is to fight inflation. It could be used. Their power bills have gone up. Kids' numbers, our student body numbers have gone up. So just the cost of running our schools is going up. And so to say it's a blank check, well, yes and no. I mean, we have insurance costs. We have, you know, salaries. I hate to always put that in. We did cover that. But have you bought a textbook lately?
Right.
We can't even get modern textbooks. I mean, they're $400 a textbook if you go to buy a calculus book. Their inflation is equal as everyone else. Groceries in our school lunch programs. Mm-hmm. It needs to address our school issues likewise.
Representative DeMorda, I wanted to get your thoughts on that too.
Thanks. You know, I do believe, and you may have heard me say yesterday, that this is not the way that we typically do policy. And we are policy makers being asked to come in and vote on a bill that, we didn't have any time to really deliberate. You didn't see any changes to the bill. Of course, you saw a last-minute change the day before of removing the 3% accelerator.
But to account for inflation for future years,
exactly.
For the education spending specifically.
Thank you for clarifying. But it's not typical to what we do in terms of having an objective, goals, perhaps accountability measures built in, and coming with a piece of policy first and then appropriating. Now that's how we do it 99% of the time. This is outside of what we typically do to say, here's a pot of money and it can be used for anything going forward in terms of students. That's great. We've made some historic investments, but they have been targeted investments, and I have absolutely supported those. I had no problem raising teacher salaries, increasing benefits, no problem, because there were objectives and there were needs that were being identified. Writing out a blank check and not having goals and outcomes identified before I don't think it is a way that we should be doing state government.
So I'm going to say a couple of things about that. First, I thought the point was well taken that normally an RS belongs to whoever is bringing that RS, and a lot of times in committee you don't see it till the morning it's dispersed. So we got to see the governor's plan, and yes, I think he listened to some legislators, and that's why that 3% was taken off. And so I feel like that we did have an opportunity to have some input in that it wasn't just by the executive branch, but good ideas can be good ideas wherever they come from. We are still, whoever comes back in January still are going to have that opportunity to set policy, to decide that money isn't just, he has said, we will make determinations about how that money is dispersed. So that's why it's set aside. It's saying, here it is, now you're going to decide how are you going to disperse that. And if we tie measures to it, fine, then we do. But he left that body of work to the next legislature. And yesterday's job was just to say, are you okay with us setting this aside, earmarking it for this purpose?
Knowing that almost half of the lawmakers are going to be new in the 2023 session, Representative Yamamoto, are you comfortable that whoever ends up on the Joint Finance Appropriations Committee, are you confident that they're going to appropriate that money as this legislature and this governor intended?
Oh, I don't think that's a given at all. But that's the process. People are elected, as Representative DeMordaunt said, they've elected, in some cases, a whole new slate in their districts. So no, I don't think that's a given at all that anybody, but I don't even think that Governor Little has already penciled out in his mind, I think this goes here, this, and this. I think he's just saying, you know what? We agree. There needs to be more money set aside for education. Here is a stable source. We've already collected it. People, when we gave back the income tax rebate the first time around, I can't tell you how many people surprised me by saying, I would much rather you had kept that and put it into roads and schools and things that because $75, dinner out, I guess, for some people, but for some people it made a difference. And if nothing else, it recognizes, to me, 600 million, 500 million is not chump change. To me, that's a lot of money, and money that we brought in, but as you pointed out, now gets to go, part of it goes back into pockets that need it right now. So again, no, I'm not concerned about, I don't know what the new legislators will do, but this idea of that it's just thrown good money after bad, I don't buy that at all.
Representative DeMordaunt, now that the money has been set aside, what would you like to see that money go toward?
Melissa, there has been really, parents have become engaged, particularly in the politics over the last 2 years, in a way that we really have not seen in unprecedented ways. And I think that parents really want to be at the table in terms of making decisions about how their kids are educated, no matter where that is. Mm-hmm. So, public traditional schools, as you might remember, I have a long history of schools of choice, being involved with schools of choice. So if it's schools of choice, if it's homeschool, whatever that is that a parent decides, they do want to be at the table. And so I think that as we go forward and with this infusion of money, we need to make sure that we are empowering parents' voices and choice. And we know that when parents are engaged, good things happen in education. And so, it's two parts, two folks at the table, are good teachers that are doing amazing work in this state, and parents are saying, we want to be at the table. So I really would like to see this money very targeted in terms of more flexibility and more choice for families making decisions about the education of their children.
Senator Thane, where would you like to see the money end up?
Well, that's one reason we didn't set a policy to this bill. If you set significant policy to a bill, it takes weeks, if not months, of collecting data and trying to figure that out. So there's some areas that I'd look at, but most of the policies that I'm thinking of that I would promote this next session if I were there, I guess I can still promote them, don't really require more money. But the areas that I do know that require more money that I think should be considered, should be added to this list, are facilities. Maybe there should be a revolving fund to help school districts buy down interest rates, certain conditions met. There's a problem with the teachers joining the state health insurance plan, so that's an area. Another area to consider is, and would be in the brainstorming stage right now, is veteran teachers increasing their wages. We've been doing a fairly good job with beginning teachers, but that's an area. And I'm sure the list is fairly long. You could also increase the discretionary pot of money. But there's one thing you said, Melissa, that I'd like to clarify. And JFAC is probably going to wait for policy decisions from the germane committees before they allocate the funds. So there will be some policy discussions before we know where that goes.
Can I add? I think you're absolutely right. We have 115 school districts. We have, 65 charters on top of that. We've put money into the Stronger Families bill that went through last year. But every one of those school districts have unique needs. I come from a rural, remote areas. Our CTE programs, there's things we can do with career technical programs that would look totally different in our urban areas. I think we have to allow some flexibility for that money to be used where those schools need it. We haven't talked about the $80 million that goes into the on-demand careers, which come with connections to CTE programs, a lot of those on demand. And I see an expansion to our high school programs through CTE. I think there's opportunities there to help a lot in our rural areas that we can reach out. Technology, let's get some stable, that's been an issue since COVID, but I'll tell you, I get on the internet for a Zoom, internet unstable still, just because of the remote locations. We need to figure this out, and I think this money allows some of our rural districts to address very unique needs in those districts, and not necessarily, I can't do anything, I only got $10,000 because of the students. There are times when, according to our funding formula, student numbers we can't get enough to pay the bill because it's so expensive on some of that. Our smaller schools, we just can't get there. And we try to save it here and, the discretionary, and I see this as an opportunity for those schools.
And some of the $80 million is not going to go to K-12 education for the CT or workforce.
It's an in-demand fund for higher ed, but I can see CTE being part of that.
Yeah, I think it'd be part of it. Workforce development could be part of it.
Yep.
So there's a lot of questions what that will exactly look like.
But I have to be optimistic.
Yeah.
Optimism is always a good trait, but I would like to then key on something that Representative Mornott said, that I think if anything is true, parents do need to be more involved. And instead of believing what an outside source says about how your money is being spent in that district, when they have when they're setting budgets, when they're going through line item by line item about what is going on, rarely do you see, I'm on a charter school board, those parents are trusting us that we're going to use every penny wisely. But if you don't, then you have opportunities. Those are public meetings. And same thing goes for cities and counties where property taxes are actually brought in and raised or not raised and expended are at the city and the county level. And yet at the budget meetings, even despite somebody pleading, please come, rarely does anybody think, oh, I know, it would be so great to go and spend a couple of hours at the city budget meeting or the county or the school board. But if we want quality education and know that our money is going where we want it to go and not to things we don't want it to go to, we elect school board members who represent us. They're not paid, so no money goes into their pockets. Those people who are hiring the administrators, whether at the district or the building levels, and the teachers. The parents, yes, need to be involved, but before you throw the towel in on public ed, I think you need to go get involved at your school and find out. That's why, even though I've been retired for 5 years now, I still go into the schools that are in my district, whether it's Valley View, Caldwell, Nampa, Elevate, charter, our charter, because I think we do need to know where our money is going. I think we do need to know what's happening at the classroom level. And if money isn't making it into the classroom, why isn't it? Now let's go and see, is it because your IT budget takes so much just to keep things up and running and replenish whatever computers you have? Then you need to know that, and then we need to have a conversation. And I so appreciate your point about parents wanting to be and becoming more involved, but let's be involved at a level where we really are making quality decisions based on what we know to be true.
That's a great point, and those are very low turnout elections historically in Idaho and across the nation, but so critical. We're going to have to leave it there. Representative Gayanne De Mordaunt, Representative Sally Toon, Representative Julie Yamamoto, and Senator Steve Thain, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.